Its purpose is to train drivers to determine if a vehicle is safe to drive. In order to obtain a commercial driver's license, CDL, a driver must explain to a state examiner what to inspect on the vehicle and why, plus the results of the inspection. This videotape is a step-by-step guide that will prepare drivers to correctly perform a pre-trip vehicle inspection, as it is required by the Department of Motor Vehicles. As you approach the bus, you must look underneath for evidence of leaks such as oil, water, or fuel. Next, check the clearance lights, turn signals, headlights, and the four-way flashers on the front of the bus. Tell the examiner that there are no lenses missing, cracked, or broken, and that they are the proper color and securely mounted. Now proceed to the left side of the bus. Check the mirrors and frames. Report to the examiner that none are missing, broken, or cracked, and that the mirrors are securely mounted and clean. Indicate that the visibility is not impaired. Next, you will check for leaks in the left side of the engine compartment. Tell the examiner you see no evidence of water, oil, or fluid leaks. Check the water hoses, check the air compressor hoses, and the power steering hoses to determine that they are not cracked, dry rotted, or frayed. Tell the examiner that you have checked all hoses, that you see no leaks, hear no leaks, and that they are securely mounted. Next, you will check the power steering reservoir to see that there are no cracks, dents, or leaks. Also, be sure the reservoir is securely mounted. Then remove the dipstick to ensure that the fluid is above the fill mark. Now remove the engine oil dipstick to check that the fluid level is above the fill mark. Report the results of your fluid checks to the examiner. Please note, the oil dipstick is located on the left side of the engine on 1999 model buses. The dipstick is, however, on the right side of 1994, 96, and 98 buses. Next, you will check the air compressor for any visible cracks or breaks. Make sure it is securely mounted and that you do not hear any leaks. Also, be sure the air compressor drive belt is in place and not dry rotted, frayed, or cracked. Tell the examiner what you have checked and that you have no more than 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of slack when pushing down on the belt. Please note, on 1994, 96, and 98 buses, one belt drives the air compressor, water pump, and alternator. On 1999 buses, the air compressor is gear-driven. From this side of the engine, you can check that the steering column is straight, not cracked or broken, and is securely mounted. Inspect the steering gearbox. Tell the examiner that there are no visible cracks, breaks, or leaks, that there are no missing bolts, and that it is securely mounted. Next, inspect the steering linkage. Check the pitman arm, the drag link, and the steering arm. Tell the examiner that there are no loose or missing bolts, and that the steering linkage is straight, not cracked or broken, and is securely mounted. Now we will inspect the front suspension system. Inspect the leaf springs to determine that none are missing, shifted, cracked, or broken. Be sure the springs are securely mounted to the front and rear spring mounts. Tell the examiner that the spring mounts and springs are securely mounted, with no missing bolts and no cracks or breaks. Next, you will check that the shock absorbers are not bent, cracked, or broken, that there are no leaks, and that the shocks are securely mounted to the frame. Report to the examiner the results of your check of the front suspension system. Now examine the air chamber hose to be sure it is not dry rotted, frayed, or cracked, and that it is securely mounted. Be certain you hear no leaks. Then check the air chamber. Tell the examiner that it is securely mounted, that it has no cracks or dents, and that you can hear no leaks. Next, make sure that the slack adjuster is securely mounted and that it is not cracked or broken. Tell the examiner that when the brakes are applied, there should not be less than a 90-degree angle between the push rod and the adjuster arm. Also tell him that when pulled by hand, the push rod should not move more than 1 inch. The brake drum is behind this dust cover. I would examine it to make sure there are no cracks or breaks and that they are securely mounted. Look for evidence of metal shavings through the sight window an indicator that the brake linings are worn thin. Check the inside of the tire rim to see that the rim is not broken, bent, or cracked, and there is no evidence of welded repairs. Now check the inside tire wall for slashes, bubbles, dry rot, cracks, or leaks. Then check the tread of the tire for even wear. And since we're at the front, test to see that there is no less than 4/32 of an inch of tread depth. Now check the outside of the tire wall for slashes, bubbles, dry rot, cracks, and leaks. Then check the outside of the rim for breaks, bends, cracks, and evidence of welded repair. Also make sure it is securely mounted. Be sure the valve stem on the tire is straight and not cracked or broken, with the cap in place, and that you hear no leaks. Indicate to the examiner that this is the location for checking the tire's air pressure. Examine the lug nuts to see that all are there, with no shiny metal and no rust trails. This indicates that none are loose. Check the hub's oil seal to be sure all bolts are in place and there are no leaks. And as on all tests, report the results of checking the brakes, rims, and tires to the examiner. Tell him you do not see or hear any leaks. Now we'll inspect the right side of the engine compartment. Report that you see no oil, water, or fluid leaks. Check the hoses for dry rot, cracks, or frayed surfaces. Tell the examiner you see no leaks, hear no leaks, and all hoses are securely mounted. Check the engine coolant reservoir to see that fluid is visible in the sight window. If there is no sight window, let the engine cool, remove the reservoir cap, and inspect the coolant level. Some newer buses have a clear reservoir, which permits an easy visual check of the coolant level. Report to the examiner that you have checked the level of coolant in the reservoir. Inspect the alternator and water pump. Tell the examiner they are mounted securely and that the belt is not dry rotted, cracked, or frayed. Then test the tension on the belt to see that there is no more than 1/2 to 3/4 inch of slack when pushing down on the belt. Report your test results to the examiner. Please note, on 1999 buses, the water pump is located under the alternator. Also note that on 1994, 96, and 98 buses, you must check the oil level on the right side of the engine. Inspect the exhaust pipe, as much as you can see in the engine compartment, for cracks or dents. Tell the examiner it is securely mounted and shows no evidence of leaks. Inspect the frame from the same location to be sure it is straight and has no holes other than those made by the factory. Be sure there are no cracks or welded repairs. Report to the examiner what you have checked and the results. Next, we'll inspect all the lights and reflectors on the right side of the bus. Tell the examiner that no lenses are missing, cracked, or broken, and that they are the correct color and securely mounted. On the front and sides, the lenses and reflectors are amber in color. Check the fuel filler cap to be sure it is tight and not cracked. Report your inspection results to the examiner. Now we will inspect under the bus from the right side. First, check the fuel tank and cage for any visible damage or deformities. Tell the examiner you see no leaks, that the holding straps and rubber insulation are in place, and that the tank and cage are securely mounted. Inspect the frame and cross members from this location. Tell the examiner all frame sections are straight, there are no holes other than those placed by the factory, and that there are no cracks or evidence of welded repairs. Check the exhaust system from this side view. Tell the examiner you see no cracks or dents, no evidence of leaks, and that the system is securely mounted. Inspect the drive shaft. Tell the examiner it is not bent, cracked, or broken, that the universal joints show no signs of damage or wear, and that they are securely mounted. Next, we will check the rear suspension, brakes, and tires. First, check the air chamber and air chamber hose for the rear wheels. Tell the examiner you hear no leaks, see no cracks or dents, and that the hoses are not cracked, dry rotted, or frayed. Test the slack adjuster at the rear brake. Tell the examiner the adjuster is not cracked or broken and is securely mounted. Remember that when the brake is applied, the angle between the push rod and the adjuster arm should not be greater than 90 degrees. Also state that when the push rod is moved by hand, it should not move more than 1 inch. The rear brake drums are also behind the dust covers. I would check to be sure that there are no cracks or breaks and that they are securely mounted. Tell the examiner you have checked the sight window to see that there are no metal shavings visible, which would indicate the linings are worn thin. Inspect the inside of the rear tire rims. Tell the examiner it is securely mounted, not bent, cracked, or broken, and that there is no evidence of welded repairs. Check for damage on the inside of the tires. Tell the examiner that there are no slashes, bubbles, or evidence of dry rot, cracks, or leaks. Tell him the tire tread has even wear, and since it is a rear tire, that there is no less than 2/32 of an inch of tread depth. Examine the outside of the rear tires. Tell the examiner that there are no slashes, bubbles, dry rot, cracks, or leaks. Examine the outside of the rim. State that it is not bent, cracked, or broken, that there is no evidence of welded repairs, and that it is securely mounted. Check the valve stem for straightness and no cracks. Be sure the cap is in place. State that if you had a pressure gauge, this is where you would check the pressure. Inspect the lug nuts to see that all are in place, tightened, and that there are no rust trails or shiny metal around them. Make sure the bolts for the rear axle seal are in place. State that they are and that you see no leaks. Now check the rear leaf springs and spring mounts. Tell the examiner that none are missing, shifted, cracked, or broken. Tell him the springs are securely mounted to the front and rear spring mounts, that the mounts are not cracked or broken, that no bolts are missing, and that the mounts are securely attached to the frame. Since the bus has dual wheels on the rear, check between the tires for spacers or debris. Check the rear shock absorbers. Tell the examiner they are not bent, cracked, or broken. State they are securely mounted to the frame and you see no evidence of leaks. Inspect the rear section of the exhaust system and the tailpipe. State that there are no cracks or dents, no evidence of leaks, and that it is securely mounted. Be sure there are no obstructions in the tailpipe. Inspect the frame and cross member. Tell the examiner that they are straight, that you see no cracks or welded repairs, and there are no holes other than factory holes. Now check the lights and reflectors at the rear of the bus. Tell the examiner that none are missing, cracked, or broken, that they are the proper color, and they are securely mounted. Inspect the emergency door. Tell the examiner that it opens and closes freely, and that the hinges are not cracked, broken, or missing. Please note, on 1994 model buses, there is also an emergency exit door on the left side that must also be checked. Now we will proceed to the interior of the bus. Test the passenger entry door, state that it opens and closes freely, and that no hinges or bolts are missing, cracked, or broken. Inspect the entryway. Tell the examiner that the stepwell handrail and light are in place and not cracked or broken, and that the mats are securely in place and not worn or torn. Check that the fire extinguisher and 3 emergency triangles are securely mounted. Be sure the extinguisher pressure is on the green zone on the meter, and that the inspection sticker is current. State the results to the examiner and tell him that spare fuses, if carried, are stored in the glove box. Please note, on 1996 to 1998 model buses, the fire extinguisher is stored in a compartment above the window to the left of the driver's seat. Fasten your seatbelt and check the bus operating systems. Place the gear shift in neutral. Set the parking brake. Ask the examiner for the key. Then start the engine. And check that the oil pressure is rising. Check the mirrors to see that they are adjusted correctly for you. Visually inspect the windshield for cracks or breaks and to see that it is free of any obstructions. It is okay that the safety inspection sticker is in the lower left corner. Turn on the windshield wiper switch and check for correct operation in the high and low position. Activate the windshield washer. If the wiper cleans the glass, the tension is correct. Turn off the wipers and check the blades for dry rot or frayed edges. Activate the heater defroster switch and check for correct operation at high and low speed. Check for airflow against your hand. Check the voltmeter and air pressure gauges and tell the examiner the current reading of the voltmeter and the primary and secondary air brake systems. Proceed to the air brake system test number 1. Apply the parking brake. Shift the vehicle into drive. Accelerate the engine 5 to 8 revolutions per minute. If the brake is operating correctly, the vehicle should not move. Proceed to air brake system test number 2. Turn off the engine. Turn the key to the on position. Note, do not start the engine. Release the parking brake. Apply the foot brake and hold it firmly for 1 minute. Watch the air pressure gauge. The air loss should not exceed 3 pounds per square inch during the 1 minute. Proceed to air brake system test number 3. Be sure the parking brake is released. Pump the brake pedal continuously to release the air pressure. At 60 psi, the alarm system buzzer and indicator light should activate. Report to the examiner that you hear and see the brake system alarm is activated. Continue pumping the brake pedal. Between 40 psi and 0 psi, the emergency brake should be automatically activated. At this time, start the engine and allow the air pressure to build up in the system. The alarm and indicator light should deactivate at 60 psi. Report the results of the test to the examiner. Next, check the steering wheel for play. There should be no more than 2 inches of play in the wheel. Test the operation of the horn. Now turn on the headlights and check the operation of the indicators for high beam lights, the left and right turn signals, and the 4-way flashers. Ask the examiner to step outside the bus and assist you in checking the operation of the lights. You must explain what you will be checking, front and rear. Tell the examiner you will sound the horn when you are finished with the check of the front and rear lights. Test the headlights, high and low beam, the left and right turn signals, the 4-way flashers, then blow the horn. Now test the lights on the back of the bus. Check the clearance lights, the left and right turn signals, then the 4-way flashers, the tail lights and brake lights, and blow the horn. Proceed now to check the seat cushions and backs to see that none are cut, worn, or torn, and that the frames are securely mounted and not cracked or broken. Next, identify to the examiner the emergency windows and doors. State that the emergency door opens and closes freely, and that the alarm activates when it is open and deactivates when it is closed. Demonstrate the same test of an emergency window for the examiner. Identify the location and method of operation for the emergency roof hatches. Return to the driver's seat. Tell the examiner that you have concluded the pre-trip inspection and ask for further instructions.